How can we deal with dissatisfied clients? This one hurts because no one wants to admit that this happens to us, and no one wants to admit when it's happening at the time. And often we kind of push back and we think that this is the client's fault, that they're usually, it's something that they've done, usually not something that we've done. But the reality is it's not always a difficult client if we're having a dissatisfied client. So no one really goes out of their way. I mean, 99% of people, obviously there's the oddball out there, odd crazy person, but no one usually goes out of their way to make your life a living hell. It happens because the process of design and, if you're working on larger projects like the ones I work on, I mean, it can be really stressful. Like the current project I'm working on, we're gutting the property. And if a client walks in there and they look at what's going on, it's very stressful. It looks very scary. So you've got to understand things from their perspective. So what's happened along the way? So the first thing we need to look at is why this has happened. What causes dissatisfied clients? Well, there's a lot of things. A lot of things can go wrong on projects, and they often do. Things like pricing, things have been over budget. Over budget is a big one. You're kind of a quarter way or halfway through a project, the whole thing's gutted, and then you find a big problem, and the client's thinking, well, I've got to pull back, I can't afford this. And you've just agreed in the contract that you're doing full service design, and then all of a sudden the client's got like, well, the builder just found that I need to create a new footing under this whole wall which spans 10 or 15 meters, which is going to cost me another 40,000, which is your fee. So things go wrong, especially with budgets, and with prices on projects. They do escalate from unforeseen things. What else? Miscommunication. This is a big one because it's a big thing that we can control. And miscommunication is one that a lot of interior designers and architects kind of don't realize is their job, which I find kind of surprising. But this really is, if you've been taught interior design or architecture process as well, you know that communication is the most important part of what it is that we do. So, and if the communication falls down, or if there has been miscommunication, it's up to you to get to correct that and to make that right. So, also, this one hurts. It's mistakes. If we make a mistake on a project, it is our fault usually, and even if it isn't your direct fault, we need to take ownership of it somehow, not necessarily admitting it, because we also have insurance companies to deal with. But how we deal with a specific mistake is obviously done per situation. Another thing is misaligned expectations. And this again is another one that we are directly in control of, because if the client if you're not guiding the process or running the interior design project in a way where you've given your client the opportunity to speak at regular points, then maybe there's something wrong in the process of how you run the project or how you're running the project. And this can feel as though it's not our fault, but it often is. So misaligned expectations, and I see this on social media all the time. So many people are complaining that, oh, the client expected me to do this, ha ha ha. Well, no. What part did you play in that? Yes, the reality is that they might have distorted perceptions of what interior designers do, but it's up to you as the person running the project to clarify those expectations. So this kind of goes on to the silent designer. So the designer that doesn't create any updates. So it's up to us to communicate with our client, update the client regularly. So that is part of our job role, especially on large projects. You'd be surprised how many designers just disappear for a month and then send a bill. I mean, that can be unbelievably stressful for a client. And you've got to see that from their perspective. So what else causes dissatisfied clients? The quality of items. And this is, again, not something we might control. Accidents happen. There's a lot of things that can happen in not only ordering delivering, installing, where things can go wrong. So there are things that we can't control 100%, but we should have processes to deal with these things. And that, again, is something we can control. What about, well, again, this goes on to damages and delivery items and delays. That is another big stress, especially when there is a deadline on a project. The last two are stress, which I've kind of already covered because it is a very stressful project and process, or it doesn't have to be, but it can be. And then, of course, the client not feeling heard. And this, again, is something we can control because, again, how often are you dealing with the client's worries? Part of what we do as interior designers is a bit of nurturing for our clients because, yes, it is stressful. They may not understand the process, and all of a sudden their house is potentially being ripped apart and you're like, don't worry, I've got everything under control. But they need some reassurance. That is just human. So being an understanding designer, I think, does play a role in the process of running a successful project. And I think if you understand these things, you're going to have less problems with the dissatisfied clients. So how do we deal with any situation where we do have a dissatisfied client? Well, there are obviously different situations that have very specific responses, but every single time we have to stay professional. Don't forget, we are the professional in the situation. And even if other people aren't being professional, we must be. And I think that is one of the hardest things for most designers to remember, that even if people are being petty, or even if people are doing things that can be insulting or even humiliating or even just downright illegal, you've got to stay professional, because everything could be used in court and you don't want to be the person who did something that you're not proud of. So always stay professional, and remember that, this is a contract. So it's a legal document that happens. This is an agreement between you and the client, the work that you're doing. So if this falls apart, there are ways to deal with these things that you could just fall back on by looking at the contract. Also, which takes me to put everything in writing. So no matter what you've spoken about, always reiterate everything in writing to the client or to whoever was the dissatisfied person on this specific project. So making sure that everything is in writing just also allows you to clarify your thoughts if you're heated in the moment or if you're very upset about something, which happens to the best of us because, for me, for some reason, it's usually builders, but and in the moment, I can get really flustered, and I don't know what to say at the time. So I always have a tool for myself is just to stay calm, write my notes, and then I'll say I'll get back to you with a solution. And that is the way I deal with it, because I just end up saying really dumb stuff. So I now know just not to say anything at all, and then I can deal with the situation professionally. But and then write down my thoughts, because that is just the way I can handle the situation much better than in the heat of the moment. Of course, because we are professionals and we are insured, every situation that might end to potentially getting sued, which is a dissatisfied client, in pretty much, well, that is the definition of a dissatisfied client, you will usually need to contact your insurer. So this is one of the things you need to do. Just give them a call. They're basically your friend. They're the person who should be helping you, and they will guide you how to deal with the situation as well. So in quite a serious situation, or if if there's financial or a lot of financial risk or something at stake for this project, you will need to contact your insurer straight away. I mean, I would contact my insurer straight away anyway, because if you don't, then you might not be able to claim if something does happen. So that is a key thing to note. And finally, you need to see it from the client's perspective. And again, this can be really hard when things have gone a little bit sour, or if you feel that you're not in the wrong. And that is why it's important to have a process. If you haven't seen the blog post that I've written on how to manage client problems, have a look at that, because I've also given you a letter template of how to deal with the problem, and also a step-by-step process on how to manage client problems in that. So check the video, check the post, and then obviously download the letter, and that gives you the prompts of how to deal with or respond to a very specific problem that you might be having on a project. And I think the last thing to note on this is just be impartial and always stay professional. I think I've raised this a few times, but always be professional no matter how you respond. Just know that I always take it from the paranoid perspective. What if I was standing up in court and I had to justify why I said something? I will always think, when I'm writing a response to somebody in the moment, I'll always think back to that and just think, is this really what I want to say? And then I can rethink that and maybe go have a cup of tea and then come back and rewrite it. And the good news is these days you have tools like AI to help you get your thoughts out, but then you could, even use AI to say, look, these are my thoughts. How can I say this in a non-provocatory way? Or can you help me rewrite this letter to sound professional rather than complaining? So there are certain things you can do, these tools that will help you deal with dissatisfied clients. But you've always got to remember that the key thing is to always remain professional, and obviously try to avoid the things that are causing the dissatisfied clients in the first place. I'm Jo Kroback. I'm an architect and interior designer and the CEO of the Interior Designers Business School here in London.